This is my third attempt to try to make a video on the Lord's birthday. The Lord was born on Chanukah 4BC. There's a link called PassPlot.htm with all the Bible documentation in there. There are about 11 different chapters in the Bible that you need to look at in order to find out all this information. Because the Lord's birthday and his death date were central to all the Bible, because everything hinged on when he was going to be born and die. Duh. Okay? But did the scholars actually know when he was born and died? No, they debated as if it were debatable. It's not debatable. It's just that they're bad scholars and they didn't do their homework. Now, if you look in PassPlot.htm, you will find more Bible documentation than you want. If you're interested to know, then you can go look there. And it will take you, at least a month to vet what I say in there, because it took me 2 years to research it. Now, why did I do that? I did that because suddenly my pastor came out and said that the Lord was born on Chanukah 4BC, but his brain was going. God was taking his brain out at that time with Alzheimer's, or, he just had the natural disease. I don't know which it was, because it would have been a test to take it out anyway. So he didn't have time to document it. So I spent 2 years looking for it in the Bible, and I found it. The birthday is in Haggai 2. The birth year starts being tracked in Genesis 5, and that's where you get all the begats, and that leads to Abraham. And Moses, in Psalm 90, tracks time from Adam through Christ via the Bible Hebrew meter, which the scholars don't even know exists yet. Moses is accounting time sabbatically. I cover that in my Psalm 90 playlist, so you'll have to go through all that to see it. Isaiah 53 is another chapter that picks up on the chronology and updates the chronology that Moses follows in his Hebrew meter of Psalm 90. Isaiah 53 keys off that meter and apes it with his own meter, and you'll have to look at my Isaiah 53 meter hypothesis 4 videos, the most important two of which begin the Psalm 90 playlist. So just look at the Psalm 90 playlist videos. And all that is covered in BibleHebrewMeter.htm. Now, another important chapter on this is 2 Samuel 7, which is the promise of Messiah to David, promise of temple house, and promise of progeny house. God is always very witty. Okay, 2 Samuel 7 is updated in Haggai 2, because Zeru means seed, and that's a play on Isaiah 53:10, where Zerah is used. So the Lord, as God, is telling Zerubbabel, a human being, to start rebuilding on the temple foundation, which was laid on 24 Kislev. 25 Kislev is Hanukkah. 24 Kislev of 537 BC, then he didn't do anything for all those years, so now it's 522 BC when Haggai 2 occurs, and he's saying, start building. From this day on, I've put my seal on you. That's telling Zerubbabel that he's the seed of Christ. You get it? It's very clever. The foundation of the temple, the foundation of Christ, 2 Samuel 7. And then, of course, you got the first foundation of the first temple, of which David is the foundation. 1 David, 2 David, okay, in 1 Kings 6:1, which the scholars also misread. Just like they don't know that God only uses solar years in the Bible because he accounts by birthdays. The flood is accounted in terms of how old and on what year and month of Noah's birthday it was. Okay, so Haggai 2, 24 Kislev, twice hypostatic union. Okay, 25 Kislev is piggybacked on 24 Kislev because the Jewish day begins at sundown on the same day as the solar day. 25 Kislev, 357 years after Haggai 2, is Hanukkah, when they throw out Antiochus IV Epiphanes and rededicate the temple. Chanuk means to dedicate. Enoch in Genesis 5 is really Chanuk, dedicated, devoted. Okay, they rededicate the temple. And where does the Lord go to live after he's born on the dedication date of the temple in 25 Kislev, which is roughly December 25th in some years, 4 BC. Forecast as 4 BC ever since David died. 1,000 years after David died was the death deadline for Christ. So he had to have 40 years, just like David had 40 years ruling, so he had to be born 4 BC. I go through all that in PassPlot.htm. Okay, so the Lord is born on 25 Kislev, dedicated on the dedication day of the temple. And where does he go to live after he's born in Bethlehem? Nazareth. And what do you think Nazareth means? Dedication. Look it up in number 6, the Nazarite vow, where you dedicate your time to God until you cut your hair. Okay? So, you see, you got that wordplay. And then the next little marker, I'm just sort of giving you a quick summary of what's already in the webpage, is that in Luke 1:26, 2 Greek articles are used to tell you the date, which means it's the official month of the year, not Elizabeth's 6th month of pregnancy that is being talked about. It also happens to be her 6th month of pregnancy because John the Baptist is going to be 6 months older than Christ, but it's the 6th month on the calendar, which is Adar, because the Jewish civil year begins with Itanim. I think they call it Tishri now. All right? And 6 months after that is Adar, which is roughly our end of February when Purim occurs. Purim is halfway in the month. Okay? You get that? 9 months after Adar is Kislev. Kislev ends roughly our December 15th. Okay? So, Hanukkah and Christmas, because the Jews don't keep the calendar right anymore, Hanukkah and Christmas overlap in some years. Today is supposed to be, according to the Jewish calendar, Hanukkah, the beginning. So you could celebrate today as the Lord's birthday. But you'll notice that in some years, Hanukkah and Christmas coincide because the Jews don't keep the calendar right. Well, guess what? They didn't keep the calendar right in 4 BC either. So the Saturnalia festival, which was December 25th of the Julian year, of course, our calendar is not like the Julian calendar anymore, coincided with Hanukkah because they weren't keeping the calendar right then either. Ta-da! So the Feast of Dedication, which is Hanukkah, that's why there was no room at the end, because it's the busiest holiday of the year. It's like, they're July 4th. Well, they were busy with Hanukkah. All right? Everybody went to Jerusalem at Hanukkah because it's about the temple. Get it? That's why Luke reads as it does. Okay? Anyway, there's more to say, but I thought I'd at least let you know the Lord was born on Hanukkah, 4 BC. You can prove it in the Bible. So, ho, 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 happy Hanukkah Christmas. That's not the same. Hi there. The series of videos you're about to see prove that the Bible says there was no star of Bethlehem, but that it was an angel. A lot of people over the years, when I've talked to them about this, have been very upset because they don't actually look at the Bible. They go by what they hear people they like say. And like everybody else, I grew up being told that there was an actual literal star of Bethlehem, and I sang all the songs just like everybody else. I mean, when you see Father Knows Best on the old sitcoms, or Leave It to Beaver, or Bewitched, all that background and the family life that they depict, I lived that life. I was a valley girl. So it's hard and it hurts for me to have to make the videos that follow. But what we should all be caring about is what the Bible says, not what Dear Dr. So-and-so says, not our hymns and songs, okay? But we should be caring about what God says. So the videos that follow just take the Bible. Okay, I show you the words live on screen and what they say. And you know what? The answer to the questions and the problems that you're going to see is between God and you. I've had to deal with this myself. I understand it's going to be painful. And there's a link in the sidebar about this story. But the web pages are very convoluted because there's so much information. So when you watch the next 8 videos, just look at what the Bible says and start talking to God. That's all I can say. All I can do is display the Bible. I am not a teacher. Okay, women are not teachers of Bible. But women can certainly display the Bible. And that's all I'm doing. What you do with the material is between God and you. Okay? So end introduction. Next video, if you click below, will be a response video. And it will start the series on why it was an angel, not a star, over Bethlehem. This is going to be an extraordinarily hard video to make. There is a very popular lie that there was a Star of Bethlehem, and if you examine the scripture, which should be our standard, you will see that there is no such thing. The first thing you need to know is that God never, ever, ever, ever authorizes the use of stars in order to predict anything or know anything divine. That's what the pagans did. So in Deuteronomy 18, there is a prohibition against using stars, which of course all the Christians forget, because we're not too good at knowing the Mosaic Law, and we're sort of anti-Semitic in our history, and so we just don't pay a whole lot of attention to what the Bible says about the rules applicable to the Jews. And it's this kind of short-sightedness which has infected us to the extent that we are willing to believe in an inanimate star rather than the animate angel that Matthew 2 is depicting. Now let's just have a little look here, okay? See? Those nations listen to diviners. But as for you, your God has not allowed you to do so. Okay? No one who interprets omens or a sorcerer in particular is the magi. Okay? Let's see if they even use that word there. I think they might. Let's see what it says for sorcerer, so that you can see it yourself, so you know I'm not making it up. Kashaf. Alright? So it isn't, they're not using the word magi there. Okay, but that's what the magi are. They're sorcerers. Alright? They use the stars. In Deuteronomy 18:10 specifically prohibits this. Got that? So we should not be using the stars for anything. Nor is Matthew doing that. Now I'm going to use mostly the English, and this happens to be the NASB translation. Use your favorite translation. Because most of the time all you need to do is look at the English and you know immediately that the Star of Bethlehem thing is nonsense. But sometimes we're going to need to look at the Greek. And when we do, I'll do this thing and show you the lexicon and all that stuff. Okay. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. See, that was the theme of Matthew 1 right here. Okay. Kept her virgin until she gave birth to a son and called his name Jesus. Now, bear in mind, Matthew is the first gospel to come out, and he's telling a famous story, so there's a lot of stuff he doesn't need to say. The rhetorical style of the author takes into account his audience, and this is already a well-known story. What he's doing is writing it down for posterity. That's always why a Bible book is written. Okay, so when Matthew is telling this story, he's telling people what they already know. It's the way he tells the story that establishes it as the official divine account. All right, so you'll notice that it doesn't say anything here about Bethlehem. It's just very summary. Joseph awoke. This was all about Joseph's dream and how he, whether she was an adulteress, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, and it's very summary, okay, because he started out with the genealogy, okay, as a king. All right, so when he says born in Bethlehem in Judea, that was knowledge everybody already had. So that's why it's so summary. Okay, but the now after is really important, because there's a lot of stupidity about this too. Tuda, all right, it means immediately after. Okay, it doesn't mean 2 years. ISBE Encyclopedia has some goofball scholar who thought there was a 2-year hiatus between the birth and Matthew 2:1. No, tuda means it happened right away, just after he was born. See, look, it's a participle. All right, just after he was born. So it's just after. They should put the word now just after. They got now after, which is fine, because he's setting an immediate contrast. Da sets an immediate contrast with the previous verse. In other words, just after she gives birth and gives him his name, okay, these magi arrived. Now, they didn't just arrive. They arrived with flash. Okay, the magi were well known. They, they had come from Persia. These were guys that, were part of the society that sort of Daniel founded, but they got away from Scripture. All right, and they were into their goofball, Zoroastrian kind of stuff. All right, so these magi, when they arrive, this is after Jesus is born. Okay, these magi are paraginomai. Let me show you the verb. See, paraginomai. That means they arrived with a flourish. That means they arrived with pomp and circumstance. Okay? They didn't just show up like you show up at a hotel without announcement. You're a nobody. They're not nobodies. And they don't arrive like nobodies. They arrive with, a whole caravan, and they're really important VIPs. And that's why it's an issue to Herod. Because these guys were considered, important. All right? So when they arrive, they paraginomai. All right? They present themselves to Jerusalem. And now what are they doing? They're talking. The magi are talking. Where is he who's been born King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east. Okay? Now, star in the east isn't necessarily east. It's rising right here. Anatole. In the lower left-hand corner. Rising. They could have been the ones in the east seeing his star rising. There's a sort of a play there. From the source of. Okay, rising. It could also be from where they were in the east. Alright? But they're the ones saying it. Alright? And one thing my pastor covered when he covered this verse in 1965 in his Matthew exegesis was that this seeing isn't necessarily an eye seeing, but a prophetical seeing, So, but in either event, it's the magi who are talking. It's not the Bible. The Bible's not saying that there was a star. They're saying it was a star. And it could have a figurative value, which is what my pastor thought in 1965. Or it could have, a value of their belief. The Bible is not saying it's a literal star. And we're gonna see why in a minute. All right, we also saw Deuteronomy 18. Okay, now, when Herod heard this, he was, and the word isn't troubled, it's tarasso, and it means rabidly upset. Okay, let me show you. Okay, tarasso. Tarasso means to be really, commotion, stirred up, irritated. It's from buk and buzz and ragaz. All right, it's got a lot of Hebrew words in the Old Testament that it translates. Okay, throw into confusion, unsettle, cause an uproar. And we're talking about the crowd here. Now, think about this. It isn't too hard. You don't even have to know Greek to think about this. Why would Jerusalem and Herod be upset at these VIPs arriving about King of the Jews? If there was really a star that you could see, then they would know about that star also. You see that? So they weren't seeing any star, or they wouldn't have been upset by what the magi said. Do you get that? The magi are reporting whether it's a star of prophecy, which is, my pastor's interpretation, and that makes sense, or whether they were seeing what they thought was a literal star, and that makes sense later on in the passage. Then why isn't Jerusalem seeing it? Because it's not really a star. You get that? Star worship, star prediction is prohibited in Deuteronomy 18:10. So we are not talking about a star. So Matthew's very tongue-in-cheek here. Because if there was a real star in the sky standing over, and by the way, it's Jerusalem, not Bethlehem, then why is Herod and Jerusalem surprised? There's no reason to be surprised if you can see the star, okay? There's no reason to be upset. All right? And then look what happens. Gathering all the people, this is Herod, is inquiring where Messiah was to be born. And they said in Bethlehem, and then here's the quote, okay? Then Herod secretly calls the magi. Look, if it was a star you could see, Herod wouldn't need to do this in secret. Do you get that? Herod is secretly calling the magi. Why? Because this whole star business is prohibited, as we saw at the beginning of the video, by Deuteronomy 18:10. When did the star appear? All right? Because it's prohibited under the Mosaic law. So there was no star that the Jews saw because it was prohibited. God would not break his own Mosaic law. You got that? And therefore Herod is secretly calling the magi. All right? Secretly. And then, of course, their business with the 2 years and all that good stuff I'm going to cover in a few minutes, or maybe in 10 or 15 minutes. But understand, Herod wouldn't have to secretly call magi for a star everybody could see. So there was no star. It's either a prophecy, being called a star as a figure of speech, or whatever literally it was, which we'll see later is an angel. All right? Herod and Jerusalem could not see. So it couldn't be a physical star. It couldn't be an inanimate object. You got that? And he wouldn't have to call them in secret if it were an inanimate star. So it's not a miracle star, it's a miracle angel, as we're going to see in a few minutes. All right. So then he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go look for him. Okay. Now, Luke is going to pick up on this in a couple of minutes. He's going to explain why the child is not in Bethlehem when they go look. But I'm going to cover that, a little later on. I just want you to see the Matthew account at the moment. So after hearing the king, they went on their way, and the star went on before them until it came and stood over the place where the child was. Now, the place where the child was is not as stable. And that's why you need the Greek. Okay? Idu hoaster, which they saw rising in the east. In other words, now it's saying, yes, this was a literal light body, but an angel can look like a star. Proago, look at this. Proago means to lead forward or lead forth. Okay, this is something people do. People lead. Stars don't lead. Okay? And you can look up proago in any lexicon you want. Thayer's happens to be showing in the lower left-hand window. Okay? It has to do with what people do. It's a people verb. It is not an inanimate verb. Okay? Precede, lead the way. Okay? Go ahead in time. Okay? To take or lead. To take or lead from one position by taking charge. Stars don't take charge, okay? Inanimate objects don't take charge. They don't lead forward. The star is leading where to? Until, okay, eus. It comes. Stars don't come anywhere. Stars are running out in miles and miles and miles up in the sky. This one is actually coming to stand. Stars don't stand still, okay? Histamine in the lower left-hand corner. Histamine means to stand still. All right? And what does it come over? It comes over the place where the child is. Okay, but what's the place of the child? The house in, I'm going to go forward here, okay, Nazareth. Okay, and we know that. Now I have to switch to Luke. Let's see, gotta go past the prophecy. There we go. Back, back, back. Where is it? Back, back, back. Wait a minute. Days of purification. That's the shepherds. That's the prophecy. Where is it? There. So he registers there. Okay, but then after the days of the purification are over, right here, they brought him up to Jerusalem. Okay? In other words, he was born in Bethlehem, but they brought him up to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was about 5 miles northeast. Okay, east. Star rising in the east, got that. Okay? Pair of turtle doves. Alright? And then what do? They return to Nazareth. When they had performed everything according to the law of Moses, law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee to their own city of Nazareth. Okay? Now, this is the place where the magi went after coming to the house. It's not a photne. Photne is the stable. Okay? They're going to, next verse. The mouse is beginning not to work again. House. Oikon. Oikia, rather. They come to a house. They're not visiting him in a photne. Photne was the stable where he was born. That's here in Luke. You don't hear about the stable thing until Luke. Luke is showing the angels, plural, visiting the shepherds, plural. Okay, see? These are angels suddenly standing. Matthew's talking about one angel that a bunch of magi saw. Luke is talking about a bunch of angels with one head angel suddenly standing before them. See, stood? That's his to me again. Angels stand. Alright? See? Histemi, epistemi in this case. Alright? Standing before. That's why it's epistemi. Alright, so manger is the photne. See, right here. These are grave clothes actually, but I'm not going to spend time on this. This is a grave clothes. But here's photne. He's born in a photne. He's born in a feeding trough. But where do the magi go? Here in Matthew 2:11 on the left-hand side. They go to a house. Well, but where's the house? In Nazareth. So all of this is happening within a month. Okay, now how do we know that the whole thing is a month? First of all, I've got to take you back to the comparison. We're looking at Matthew 2, which Luke 2 is elaborating on. The rule in Scripture for the writing of Scripture is that a future Scripture writer, here Luke, has to elaborate on and tie back to all prior Scripture. In this particular case, he's tying back to Matthew, which is the first book that was out. Probably came out 35, 40 AD, because all the other Bible books tie back to it. And the earliest Bible books after Matthew are basically Paul and James. James comes out next because Paul is quoting from James and Matthew. So then the Paul stuff, the early Pauline epistles like Corinthians and not the Corinthians, Galatians, I want to say. You know, those really early ones, those are quoting Matthew. Romans is also quoting Matthew, as I explained in my Romans 10 video. Okay, we need to look at Matthew again, because there's this, and I'm going to go through why it's a month. But this is the reason why you know that it's an immediate thing. Okay? This is the Greek, and let me see if I can give you the lexicon. That's just the definite article. But this is an idiom. Okay? Does a transitional particle, it's meaning immediate contrast, usually mild contrast. It's setting up something versus the verse that came before. And we saw that the verse that came before, let me switch back to the English, is that she gives birth. Okay? So when it says now after Jesus was born, it means immediately after. And you know that because it's tuda. If there was a hiatus, there would be a different Greek expression using meta, usually metatauta, after these things. Now sometimes metatauta is also immediate, but it implies that there is a marked change. Da means that there's no marked change. There's a contrast, but it's not a marked contrast. Okay? It is stressing the immediacy, alright, more. Alright? And the other reason you know is because it's a participle of his birth. Okay? Genao means to be born. So just after he was born. And if they wanted to show that there was a hiatus, this wording wouldn't be here. It'd be different. There's lots of different ways in Greek they could change it. But he's setting up a contrast between the secret birth and the very loud public magi. Alright? That's what he's doing. Okay, because there's this dedication of Christ to paying for our sins. Alright, because the whole theme is dedication and light. That's what Hanukkah means. Feast of Dedication, Feast of Light. So that's what Matthew's playing on. And Luke is going to do the same thing. So just after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, you got these loud magi. Where is he who's born King of the Jews? So they know that it just happened. Alright, and that's why everybody's all upset. Remember, we saw this was terrasso, and it doesn't just mean to be troubled, it means to be rabidly upset. Okay, so Luke is giving you details to the Gentile, Luke is writing a generation later, and he's setting up, the background. Alright, and then he's saying he's going to Bethlehem. He's explaining it further. But he starts out with the decree of Augustus because, you can find this out extra-biblically. Herod was dying in 4 BC. Augustus, you can also find out extra-biblically, was the beneficiary of Herod's kingdom. He was named in the will by Herod. Alright? So Augustus is basically going to have to do a census now because Herod is dying, and the kids of Herod, either Herod has killed off, or they can't be trusted. And besides, Augustus is the heir, not the kids. So Augustus has to set up a census. And Quirinius was one of his best friends, even took care of his kids. You can find that out extra-biblically also. So this governor of Syria, doesn't mean he was governor. He was the high official. He could have been an emissary status. Doesn't mean he was officially governor. Governor is one of the meanings. Alright, and people make too much of that. Again, because they're using the English, they're not looking at the etymology of the Greek. I'm not going to pay attention to that. Okay, I've done that elsewhere. You can find it elsewhere. All right, the point is that the census is new because Herod is dying. Augustus has to take over as the heir, and people therefore have to go to register for the census. Now they're going to their hometown because this is handled still by the Jews. Herod handled the taxes for the Jews. It is still being handled by the Jews, but there's an oversight now by the Romans. And by registering for the census with the Jews, using the Jewish system of registering in your hometown, that makes it less obtrusive. And then you can read up on the head tax that Augustus instigated beginning when he took over from the Senate. And it took a while for it to get to the provinces. And besides, Herod was already administering the tax, but now Herod was dying, and that's why Augustus steps in. Okay? But this still keeps it in, format of Jewish hands. That's why you can't find anything in Roman records, because it isn't in the Roman records. The head tax was already part of Jewish law. All right? They had their own version of the head tax, so this was just a tack on. All right, so then Joseph goes to Bethlehem because that's the city of David. So Joseph is playing off Matthew 2 on the left-hand side. All right? Now, it's a month because, first of all, we know this is happening right away. Secondly, we know that Joseph has just finished going to Bethlehem in order to register with Mary. And while they were there, okay, well, that's only 1 week, okay? She has to give birth. Now, this is another place where, because Christians don't give a flip about the Bible, they don't bother to look up the Mosaic Law. And we're going to stop here, and then in the next section you're going to see about what the Mosaic Law has to say about this. She has to dedicate him at the temple on his 8th day for the bris, and she has to also purify herself by 40 days later. And that's why we know they're there for a month. You now see in the left-hand corner Leviticus 12. This is the law about the purification of the woman. You will notice that if she bears a male child, this actually has to do with why we get the 40 days. Okay, when a woman gives birth and bears a male child, she shall be unclean for 7 days, and the days of her menstruation, blah, blah, blah. On the 8th day, the flesh of the male child, that's in this case Jesus, shall be circumcised. Okay? So he's presented at the temple to be circumcised on the 8th day. That's law. But she, for another 33 days, cannot touch anything and cannot enter the sanctuary until the days of her purification are completed. All right? So that's why Luke, right here, when the 8 days had passed, you see the parallel to Leviticus 12 on the left? When the 8 days had passed before circumcision, his name was called Jesus, okay, which means that he was presented for the circumcision, which because at the circumcision, that's where Simeon is there, and Anna. That's the rest of the chapter in chapter 2. All right? But this one is talking about the next 33 days, the days of their purification. It's saying there because it's both of them, okay, her and him. And you can see on the left-hand side, it's 8 days for the Lord and then 33 days for her. And that's why you got this business with the pair of turtle doves. All right? See? Turtle doves. All right? And there's 2 of them because there are 2 people. You got that? Okay, one for herself and one for the child. All right, see? If she cannot afford a lamb, she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now, Joseph was not poor. So either this was just a custom at the time to do turtle doves, or Maybe that's all they chose to do, because the dove represents peace and reconciliation also. The duality would represent the hypostatic union. So, some people make a big stink about Joseph being poor, but it doesn't say anywhere that they were poor. They were a royal family. If you want to pretend that they're poor, well, you can use this verse. I don't think that's what it's talking about. But, see? I'm just showing you the most important thing to see is in the left-hand side, Leviticus 12 is telling you the number of days. So they were in Jerusalem for 8 plus 33 days. They wouldn't be going to Bethlehem, then going to Jerusalem, and then going home, because it takes like 6-7 days the way they had to travel to go home. So they would just hang around Jerusalem. They had friends and family there, because Mary's cousin was Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's husband was officiating at the temple. All right, so he lived nearby, relatively nearby. So they would be staying in the environs of Jerusalem, waiting for the days of the purification were completed. All right? And obviously, if they brought him up to Jerusalem again, that means they weren't there, so they were staying around, somewhere close by. You see that? Okay, so that's how we know it's a month. It's not 2 years. Okay, but what about the 2 years? All right, because down here, we got Herod secretly calling the magi, which he wouldn't have to secretly call anybody if there was a real star. So we know it wasn't really a star. And he's scheming, of course, to try to find out where the kid was. And we just saw, and we're going to see again, that the kid was back in Nazareth by the time the magi get there. Okay? We're going to go through this a little bit more, but I want you to see, they come to the house. They're not going they don't find him in Bethlehem. They're at a house. They're not in a manger. They're not in a stable. All right? And then they're suddenly warned in a dream not to return to Herod. No mention of the star anymore. Notice that? But we're going to get to that a little bit later. I just want you to see something. Okay? Herod, this is where the 2 years comes, because we're just talking about timing now. From 2 years old and under. Okay, the common thing that people like to say, which is really dumb, is that there was a 2-year hiatus between the magi coming and the birth. But that's not what Herod's doing here, okay? Until a child is 2 years old, you can't tell its age, because it suckles. All right, it nurses at its mother's breast. So what Herod is doing, all right, is that he was planning ahead. Because you can't tell a newborn from some other child who's suckling because the baby's face is hidden. He's planning on killing all these babies right away. The mother isn't going to, it's not like the soldier's going to come up and say, "Hi, I need to kill your kid. Is your kid under 2 years old?" And the mother's going to say, "Oh, yes, here's my baby. Go ahead and kill him." All right? The minute the soldiers start killing the infants, the mothers are going to be hiding their infants, okay? So it's a detection mechanism. If you catch anybody suckling an infant, just kill it. So he's planning ahead. It's not behind, it's ahead. All right? Because the star, according to these guys, which was really an angel, and we're going to cover that more in a later section, okay? It just happened. All right? Remember? We have seen it. Yeah, and then here it is, the star that isn't a star, that's going before them, leading them to the house. Okay, see, after coming to the house, it stands. It stood. Stars don't stand. Angels stand, though. And, of course, in Luke 2, we see a bunch of angels standing. Coming to the house. Where is that? In Nazareth, after the month is over. So after the month is over, they go back to Nazareth. This is like the 5th week, 6th week. All right? So now Herod, when they don't come back and report to Herod, he has to figure out, okay, let's see, 2 years old and under, they're suckling. So let's just kill everybody 2 years old and under that's suckling, because I can't tell how old the kid is. All right? I know it happens within 6 weeks, but until the kid's 2 years old, you can't tell its age because it's suckling. And of course, the mothers are going to hide their kids. All right? So he's planning ahead when he says 2 years old and under. It's not backwards, it's forwards. But the backwards scholars who don't bother to recognize it in verse 9, that's a human verb, not human necessarily, the sentient being, a leading, and a standing. 2 verbs that stars never do. Okay? And they come to a house, they don't come to a manger. So all that business about the 3 wise men is a bunch of garbage. And they didn't go to Bethlehem, they went to Nazareth. Okay? But right now, the most important thing is to know the timing. Herod is planning ahead when he says 2 years old and under. It's not backwards. Anybody suckling that you don't know how old it is, it could be newborn. So that's why he's giving that order. Okay. This part on the right-hand side of Luke, verse 39, is taking place just before verse 11. Can you see that? The magi is like split-screen TV. The magi heard the king went on their way. Okay? But the star, which is really an angel, okay? And we know that because we have... See, it says star, but angels are called stars. Alright? Which they had seen in the east. In other words, they could see the angel because the angel wanted to be seen. Just like the angels in Luke 2 on the right-hand side are seen by shepherds but weren't seen by anybody else. Alright? Proago, the angel, led them. Okay? Lead forward, lead forth. It's leading somebody. Alright? And the somebodies in this case are the magi. And then it comes to stop. That's histome right here. Alright, means to stand. And that's Thayer's lexicon on it. This is Freiberg's. And this is Bauerdanker. Okay? To cause to be in a place or position. Set, place, bring, allow. Okay? To cause. To stand. And we saw in Luke 2 earlier, okay, that the angel was standing before the shepherds. That was episteme in the previous episode. Okay? This is istome. So when Luke is talking about the angel standing, he's playing to Matthew 2:9. Same verb, except Luke's using episteme because the angel standing before the shepherds. Alright? So that's where we're coming in. The magi hearing the king, the star, which is really an angel, leads them where the child is. And the child is not in Bethlehem. The child, this is that parenthetical, they're very happy to finally see it, because they didn't see it in Jerusalem, just like Jerusalem didn't see it. Well, stars don't just disappear and show up. Angels do, though. Alright? And then here's verse 11, after coming to the house. This is another reason we know that Joseph wasn't poor. This is oikia. This is a big house. This isn't a little house. Alright? My pastor made a big stink of that when he exegeted this verse in 1965. You can get it in his Matthew 1965 series. It's a big house. It's not a manger. After coming to the house, they saw the child. Alright? Translation's decent. Only thing is that you need to understand that oikia is a big house. Alright? See? Property, wealth, goods. It's a synonym. It means house, but the point is it's also used for wealth. You know, people didn't, you have to have money to own a house, even today. Okay? So Joseph is not poor. I don't want to belabor that point. The point I do want to stress is that they're not in Bethlehem. The child is not in Bethlehem. He's at a house now. He's not in a manger. And this is within a month. So what did the Lord actually, so then this so-called star is not a star, but a guardian angel. It's not hard to understand. All right? They were positive to the idea of King of the Jews. So God had an angel that they saw at a distance, and it couldn't be a star because it would be too high in the sky. A star doesn't lead you to the house, but an angel could. Okay? Jerusalem didn't see this star, and frankly the magi weren't either, because they wouldn't be coming to Jerusalem asking where he is if they were still seeing the star. So they're coming there because they don't see it now. They're in Jerusalem. Yeah, because the angel's like right overhead. And they're coming to ask people who are negative to the King of the Jews being born. And of course the King of the Jews being born and is not seen, the angel is not seen by these people. That's why they're upset. Should have been good news to them. It's fulfillment of God's prophecy to the Jews. But they weren't happy. They were tarasso. They were pissed off. All right? And they didn't obviously even remember the prophecy. So he had Herod, this is Herod right here, asking. Okay, well, here's the quote from Malachi. I think it's Malachi. Micah 5:2. Here's the verse it's quoting. Okay? Micah 5:2. All right? So it's not a literal star. All right, then what is it? It can't be a star, but it can be an angel. All right, and we just saw. Okay, suddenly now this so-called star, this should be in single quotes. The star appears because it leads them and then stands. Yeah, an angel. And when they saw the single quote star, they're very happy. Yeah, because they're still positive. And after coming to the house, which as you can see on the right-hand side, highlighted in blue, is Nazareth. Now they're showing, they believe in him. They worshiped him. And they're giving him gifts. Okay, now look at this. No more star. They're now warned in a dream, just like Joseph is in the next verse. See, Joseph gets a dream. Joseph was obviously a believer. And these magi are believers too, because now they're warned in a dream not to return. See? So, when Luke writes this, he doesn't have to say what happened afterwards. That's already covered in Matthew. So Luke is filling the parenthesis between here and here. So Luke's account fills the parenthesis. When they had done everything according to the law of Moses, remember? That was the purification. Right here. Days of purification. Okay, that's the 40 days. So there's this guardian angel taking care of them for 40 days between at least Bethlehem and their trip back to Nazareth. When they get back to Nazareth, of course, the angel takes the magi there. And whether it's the same angel being used by God, because by God is in quotes there, it's not actually in the verse. Let me see. I'll show you. They're warned. It doesn't say by who. Okay? See? They were advised. Alright? Through a dream. There's the word for dream. Right here. Alright? But you can argue that it was the same angel because the angel appears to of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream. Whether that's a theophany or not, it wouldn't be actually. It would be an angel. Okay, because Christ is already God and man on earth. Okay, so an angel appears to Joseph in a dream. So it could have been the same angel warning the magi. I don't really know. I mean, you know, it's sometimes in Greek they leave it out here because they're going to mention it here, and that implies that it's the same angel. You decide that as you will, but obviously it's not a star. Okay? So, we see that they return to Nazareth. So he's filling in oh boy. Sorry, my mouse went funky. Verse 39. He's filling in verse 39 what happened between 10 and 11, how 10 and 11 happened. Okay? And he doesn't fill in any more about that because Matthew already covered it. So the official divine addition to Matthew is filling in what Matthew didn't cover. And that's always what new Bible books do. Okay? Now, we also covered the 2 years. That's proactive, as it were. Vilely proactive. Herod is going to try and kill everybody. All the children, 2 years old and under, because you can't tell how old they are if they're suckling. So he doesn't care. He's heartless. Alright? And we have this one. A voice was heard in Ramah. Ramah is a common name for the northern provinces of Israel. Northern sections, the mountainous sections. Okay? It's not just Bethlehem. It's Bethlehem and farther north. Well, Nazareth is north. Go look at a geographical map of Israel, and you can see that. Okay? Because I want to go fast now. Alright, so all this detail about what happened afterwards. Alright? Coming back to Nazareth after Herod the Great is dead. All that doesn't have to be said by Luke because it's already said by Matthew. Alright, and again, as we saw in the Hanukkah video, Nazareth means dedicated. Now, we're going to cover in the next section a little bit more about what that dedication is because I want you to see the wordplay that both Matthew and Luke are using on Hanukkah. Okay, here we're going to go through some highlights on how Matthew and Luke are playing on the themes of Hanukkah. Remember that Hanukkah is predicted as the Lord's birthday in Haggai 2. Haggai. I always confuse this with Hagios, which is actually a Greek term. So I always say it wrong. Okay, in Haggai 2, you have this going on. Alright, first time he comes, there are 3 recordings of a message. 21st of the 7th month, that's the end of the Feast of Booths. The Lord is tying the end of the Feast of Booths to Hanukkah, what will be Hanukkah. Alright, that's really important because on the opposite side of the Jewish calendar, in the first 6 months of the Jewish sacred calendar, Pentecost occurs. And Hanukkah is basically, due to intercalation, the opposite of Pentecost, just as Booths is the opposite of Passover. So Passover ends on the 21st of the first month, and Booth's ends on the 21st of the 7th month. I cover that in the PassPlot.htm, which hopefully you've had a chance to skim by now. Okay, now, beginning in Haggai 2:10, we're now looking at the same day that Hanukkah will occur. But it's the day. Remember, in Jewish time, the 9th month, which is Kislev in the Jewish calendar, in Jewish time, the new day begins piggybacked on the old solar day. Okay, this is a really clever system of accounting. So the 24th of the 9th month is the 24th of Kislev, the 25th of Kislev, which will become Hanukkah, all right, is going to begin at sundown of this day. So twice the Lord has Haggai send a message. The first time, he is being very sarcastic about being unclean. All right? Now, what's so clever about this is that what's going to become Hanukkah is due to the temple being unclean. So the Lord is anticipating the meaning of this day by 357 years, because at the time he's speaking Haggai 2:11, it's 522 BC. Maybe 521. All right? So he's anticipating what's going to become 164 BC Hanukkah when he starts talking about unclean. Because the temple is going to be unclean. It will have been defiled by pigs and human sacrifices for 3 years, from 167 BC to 164 BC. That's in my PassPlot.htm, by Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Epiphanes means illustrious in Greek. Okay, it's a very, stupid name. All right. So he's saying this people is unclean. So they will remember. This is real important. When Antiochus is going to make the temple unclean, the people will therefore be caused to remember Haggai 2, so they will know that their temple is unclean because they are unclean. He's chiding them for not doing what they were supposed to do and build the temple. Okay, but look, consider from this day onward. This is so clever. Okay, from this day onward, when the day ends, it's sundown. What's the next day? The 25th. So you can understand why they pick the 25th of Kislev to institute Hanukkah, because they're remembering Haggai 2. This is the first of two prophecies on the same day. Very unusual. I don't even know that there's another prophecy in the Bible that's done twice in one day. Okay? Now consider from this day onward. So that's the first half of the prophecy. All right? And then the point he's trying to say is that before the temple was built, they didn't have enough food, and the Lord afflicted them because you didn't come back to me. So now he's saying, consider from this day onward. See how he's repeating it? That's very important in Bible prophecy. So from sundown on, from the 24th of the 9th day of the month, from the day the temple was founded, so they, in 537 BC, they had laid the foundation stone, but then didn't do anything. And because they didn't do anything, verse 16 and 17, they had bad crops. That's Leviticus 26 playing out on them. So he's prophetically pointing up to the future, the Daniel 7, Daniel 8 stuff, okay, which had already come out, remember. Daniel came out before Haggai. Daniel came out in 538. All right? So Haggai is playing to Daniel about the future prophecy of this Antiochus guy in Daniel 7 and 8. I think it's Daniel 7 or 8. I forget. I think it's Daniel 8 where the 2300 days is. I'm not going to look it up now. You can look it up. Okay? So Haggai is playing to Daniel. So they're going to remember Daniel and Haggai when it actually comes to pass in 167. Well, actually, Antiochus took over in 169 BC, and he desecrates the temple from the period 167 to 164. So all of this is coming back to their minds. Do consider from this day onward. See, he's warning them in advance. They already have Daniel at the time Haggai talks. All right? So this is building on Daniel. And now he's saying, from this day on I will bless you. In other words, this day is going to end at sundown. That begins the 25th. And now, all of this scarcity that they were suffering, they're not going to suffer anymore because he's going to bless them. Why? Because it's going to become the anniversary of Christ's birth. And how do you know that? Because then the word of the Lord comes a second time to Haggai on the same 24th day of the month. This time it's not going to the priest, it's going to Zerubbabel. Now Zeru is Chaldean for seed. In Hebrew it's Zerah. You can see the same word used in Isaiah 53:10 in Hebrew. Okay, Babel means Baal, really. So this means seed of Baal. And he was appointed governor of Judah by Darius. Okay? And now this is a personal promise to Zerubbabel. I'll overthrow, I'll do everything. Look, oh, you just can't believe all the things I'm going to do. And on that day, okay, now how's he going to overthrow? Well, it's dual. All prophecy in the Bible is dual. He's going to overthrow the kingdoms and destroy the power. When? When they overthrow Antiochus Epiphanes in the future. That was already predicted in Daniel. And I want to say it's Daniel 8. All right? And on that day, okay, on that day, okay, but that day is the day that's coming just after he speaks to. Because he's saying, on the 24th, I will do this on that day. Okay? But here's the present. I have chosen you. And then you got signet ring, and that's shorthand for the Jeconiah curse. In the Jeconiah curse, you can look it up in the Bible, look up Jeconiah verses and look up signet ring. He tells Jeconiah he's taking him off his finger. But now he's telling Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, I'm going to put you on my finger. You are my signet ring. I've chosen you today, the 24th day of Kislev. Okay? The second time he comes, see, play on hypostatic union, talking to the seed. Could it be funnier? All right? The seed of Baal is going to become the seed of Christ. I will make you a signet ring. In other words, the thing he took off from Jeconiah. Okay, Jeconiah had adopted Shealtiel. And it's possible that Shealtiel adopted Zerubbabel. I don't know if it was his natural son or his adopted son. Okay, but it's Zerubbabel who's the signet ring. I have chosen you. All right? On that day. See, this is a play on words. On that day that he overthrows. See, I will overthrow on that day. Okay, but the same thing on that day, 24th day of the month. Okay, because what's following it? Hanukkah. On that day, Hanukkah 164 BC, he overthrows Antiochus Epiphanes. And the temple is rededicated on that day. And on that day, same, anniversary of that day, the Lord is born, and of course the Lord is the King of the universe, and obviously overthrows all the kingdoms. You see that? So remember, God is one big now, so this future is as if it's already happened already. Alright? I will make you a signet ring, I have chosen you. You see? Alright, so all of that is in mind. Now you have to look at the book of Maccabees, which I don't have time to go through, but my website covers it. Look at the book of Maccabees, 1 and 2 Maccabees, to get your sense of what happened at Hanukkah. But basically they had a candlelight parade and they rededicated the temple, and Chanuk means to dedicate. Now Chanuk means to dedicate in the sense of passive. Being dedicated by someone else. Whereas Nazer, this is going to be really important, Nazareth, all right, is what he's playing to, and he saves it at the end, Nazarene, for the Nazarite vow. Okay, this means house of dedication. This is active. The person is dedicated, the Nazar is dedicating himself, and that's in number 6. We can go there, I think. I think you're going to need to see it. That's in number 6, where you do the dedication. Okay, see, vow of a Nazarite. To dedicate himself. Okay, let's go look at that in the Hebrew. Okay. Whoops. Verse 2. Okay, here we go. All right, the Nazarite. Let me show you the English. Wait a minute. Okay. Dedicate. Nazar. See that? That's using Strong's, but I mean, you know, I don't necessarily use Strong's, but it helps you see it. See it in the lower right-hand corner? There's your Strong's number for those of you who like Strong's. I can't stand Strong's. All right. And then here's the Hebrew right here. Let me show you. Yeah. Well, you'll have to, let me see if I can get the window to be longer. See, that's one great thing about BibleWorks is that it has the mouse feature allows you to just see the lexicon the minute you put your mouse over it. See? Separate, consecrate oneself. That's the difference between Chanukah and Nazar. In Nazar, you're doing it yourself. All right? You're separating and consecrating yourself here in particular to study Bible, to be in the temple. You have special sacrifices. You let your hair grow. That signifies that you're not living a normal life, because the normal life is to have short hair if you're a man. All right, so by having his hair long, he's dedicating himself to study. That's why Samson's hair was long. He was supposed to be dedicated to study his whole life, and of course we know it didn't turn out that way. But this isn't Samson now. This is just the concept of the Nazarite vow. It was one of the most important vows in Judaism. It screwed up Paul in Acts 18 and 21. All right? Nazareth, therefore, means house of dedication. All right. Nazarene, look in the left-hand corner of verse 23, Matthew 2:23. Nazarene means someone who dedicated himself. Versus Chanukah, which is when somebody else dedicates something else, in this case the temple. See the tie? All right. So you got the theme of dedication. You got the theme of lights, because what happened on Hanukkah, which of course most people know, they call it the Feast of Lights even today, is that people streamed out of their houses in 164 BC to dedicate the temple because they'd cleaned it. And they're thinking of, remember we just saw Haggai 2, which plays back to, let's see if it's really Daniel 8. Now I might as well go look there. Pretty sure it's Daniel 8. Daniel. The one with the 2300 A's. Yeah. This is the prophecy of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. It's literally, see, it says evenings and mornings. That's the Hebraic method of saying that it's literal. So you'll see the same language in Genesis 1. Okay? 2300 evenings and mornings. That means that as soon as they saw Antiochus, they knew to count 2300 evenings and mornings. And then the place would be restored. All right? So this came out from Daniel. Haggai 2 is playing to Daniel. And so that's why the Hanukkah celebration is occurring on the 25th, which is the evening of the 24th. But they actually have the celebration the next morning, bringing candlelight. I don't know why they did it in the daytime, but according to Maccabees, it was done during the day. It doesn't make sense to bring out candles during the day, but anyway. All right, they have a torchlight parade, basically, to the temple, dedicating it on the 25th, supposedly in the morning. I forget where that is in 1st and 2nd Maccabees, but I quote it in my webpage. All right, when the 2300 evenings and mornings were up. All right? So, when you get here to, this is really famous then. Daniel 8 and Haggai 2 are really famous. So when Matthew is talking now, he's talking to people who know this very well. The same thing with Luke. Okay? So stuff that Matthew's talking about, he doesn't have to tell them about the prophecy of Bethlehem. He does have to tell them, quote it here, because he's showing how Herod didn't know. Okay? Because Herod didn't care what the Bible said. He has to put that in there to show that, he's disobeying the law there and all this other stuff. Okay? But notice the kind of behavior. Remember, Nazar means to dedicate and consecrate yourself. Chanuk means you dedicate something else. So Chanukah is the temple being dedicated. And of course, God is dedicating himself to our salvation. Therefore, Jesus is born in Bethlehem, just as promised. Okay, so we have Jesus' dedication right here being, started. Okay, but what is Herod dedicated to? Herod's dedicated to killing, as we saw right here. Well, wait a minute. Herod. Where's the Herod thing? Come on. Yeah, they went on their way, and then they left. I just shown it to you in the last video. They saw the star, then they warn, and they go away. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, I'm sorry, verse 16. See, this is what Herod was dedicated to. So, Matthew's playing on what everybody's dedicated to. The magi were dedicated to finding Messiah. Alright? Herod was dedicated to stopping it. And he plays this game. Alright? They, meanwhile, are still dedicated to finding him, so the star, which is really an angel, as we saw, leads them to where the child is. And of course, now they don't need the star anymore. They leave off their gifts, and now there's no star, but the angel that led them there warned them in a dream. And I say that because economy of Greek language, you mention the angel here but not here. It means it's the same angel probably. Okay. And so now Herod, who is dedicated to searching for the child to destroy him, is countered by Joseph due to a dedicated angel who is dedicated to the magi and now dedicated to Joseph, the same guardian angel that they saw. Alright, see, this is the guardian angel talking now. See that? Is this clever or what? Angel's lights, the feast of lights, angel lights, angels' bodies are made of light, dedicated to the Lord, guardian. Okay, dedicated guardian, philoso means guardian. We're going to cover that when I get to Luke 2 for a minute. Okay, dedicated to Joseph, assigned to him, talking to him in a dream, also talked to the magi in a dream. Because it was the same angel. See, stars of God, sons of God, bright morning star. They were all called morning stars. That's in Job. Okay? And the morning stars sang together for joy. That's a designation for the angels. That's why the Christ is called bright morning star. He's higher than the angels. That's in Hebrews 1. Okay? So this angel was dedicated. Joseph was sure dedicated because he marries Mary anyway. Alright, Mary was obviously dedicated. Christ is dedicated in the temple, however. And there are all these other dedications to cover. But right here we only see Joseph's dedication, Mary's dedication, the angel's dedication, the Magi's dedication, and Herod's counter dedication. Okay, Herod secretly, yeah. Got that? So you see all these dedications? So that's why Matthew waits. You know, that's why he waits. He had said the house of Nazareth right here. After coming to the house, they knew the house was in Nazareth. Okay? And the point is, Joseph was so dedicated to what the Lord said, he went back to Nazareth. Now you understand that Ramah is all the northern part of Israel. So Herod knew where the Magi had gone. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this warning. So the Magi were coming, not Magi, but Herod was coming to Nazareth to get the kid, to get Christ, to kill him. That's why Joseph had to leave. So Herod knew that Joseph was living in Nazareth. Got that? But he comes back. That's his dedication. And that's why this is funny. He shall be called a Nazarene. Yeah, because he's dedicated to our salvation. Okay, so you see all that wordplay, and that's why Nazareth is mentioned last. First of all, everybody knew what it was. Secondly, he mentions it already in verse 11. All right, after coming to the house. And most importantly, he's stressing the fact that they came back to where Herod already knew they were. See? Those who sought the child's life are dead. But he had to leave the first time because Herod's going to search for the child to destroy him. So Herod's going to know it's Nazareth. But Joseph goes back to Nazareth anyway. Got that? So the dedicated one goes back to the town called dedicated. See the wordplay? And all that is wordplay on Hanukkah. Now Luke does his own version of this same thing. We'll see that in the next episode. Okay, we've looked at Matthew, now we're looking at Luke. Luke is taking the approach from the Gentile standpoint because he's writing, to sort of include Gentile details. All right, we've already covered that part. Joseph went up from Nazareth, okay? Again, he's playing to verse 11 of Matthew. Joseph was already in Nazareth. He goes to Bethlehem. Okay? So now he's helping the reader who already knows these first 11 verses in Matthew. See, he's doing it in reverse. This is Bethlehem. All right? This is Nazareth. Matthew doesn't have to say that it's in Nazareth because everybody already knew. But Luke is writing a generation after Matthew. Luke is writing about 58-62 AD. And you know that because of the way he writes Acts. Okay. Nazareth. He's going from Nazareth to Bethlehem. So he's filling in details that aren't in Matthew. Because he's writing now the official, addendum to the gospel. All right? Filling in things. All right? The job of each gospel writer is to fill in things that were not said before because it's to another generation. And also to renew the message with respect to that new generation. In other words, the new generation didn't learn what it should have learned from the Gospels it had. So they're getting an updated version from somebody who was there, okay, or who knew it. In this case, Luke was not an eyewitness, who knew the information directly from the Holy Spirit. But it's recast in terms of what that generation needs to hear. And of course, we're a generation subsequent to all of them, and we need to hear all the information, and of course we have it. All right, so he's filling in the explanation. All right? Now, this is talking about the Mosaic Law, which we've already seen. All right? I'm not the Mosaic Law, but her birth. All right, so he's still tying to Bethlehem, right here, through verse 11. You see that? They came back. That's when they come back. This is in Bethlehem. All right, now, he is making a big point to show the contrast between the magi who are coming to Jerusalem, all right, looking for the angel that they suddenly can't see, all right, because they wouldn't be asking this if they could see the angel at this point. And of course, Herod and Jerusalem can't see it, so it's not a star. All right. So he's contrasting the appearance of the angel that Matthew was writing about, that the magi saw, with some shepherds. Okay. Now, this is really important. Very, very subtle. This word here, phulasso, is used for Nazir. See? Right there. That's Nazir. That's where Nazarene comes from. That's where Nazareth comes from. He's using the Greek word, see, for Nazir. So he's playing on words. He's depending on them knowing the LXX. Okay, because this is used in the LXX for this Hebrew word Nazir. So all those stupid KJVO people who think that the LXX was an invention of origin, they don't know what the hell they're talking about, but then we've covered that before. Phulasso is the Greek verb, and it's used here, phulassontes, because he's making wordplay on the Hebrew. He's making wordplay on dedicated. He's making wordplay on Nazareth. And he's doing it, okay, just after, look, see? She gives birth. He leaves Nazareth. Look at this. He leaves Nazareth. Nazareth, dedicated. Okay? Goes to Bethlehem. Okay? She gives birth. In the same region of Bethlehem, there were some Nazarites. Not Nazarites really, but people doing a Nazaritic job. They're dedicated to watching what? The sheep. You get that? So he's making a play on their dedication to their job, her being dedicated to give birth to the firstborn who's going to be dedicated to our salvation, coming from the town of dedication, going to house of bread, that's what Bethlehem means, and in the same region of the house of bread, there are some dedicated shepherds, guarding, keeping watch, phulasso, used for Nazir. Okay? Got it? You see the word play? Now, next thing, angel of the Lord. Oh, the star. Star, 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 star. Light. Okay, Chanukah, light. Angel, light. The glory of the Lord shone. You see the word play? You see how funny this would be if you already knew that this was happening at Hanukkah? You're looking at Matthew on the left. You're looking at Luke on the right. And they're both talking about dedication and light, which are the two main symbols of Chanukah. Okay? And here we got one angel dedicated to protecting the royal family. And here we got the head angel, okay? Because they see multitude. First they only see the one. See, they see one angel, the guardian angel. And I don't know if it's the same one. Probably not. An angel of the Lord. Okay. Glory shone. Light. Okay. And here's the heavenly host passing in review. So a whole bunch of angels appearing to a group of shepherds who are dedicated. You see how funny that is? You see how witty that is? And they're not appearing to the magi. They're not telling the magi to go to the fatne. This is a fatne. Fatne means manger. Oh, wait a minute. See, fatne. Okay? It's got a lot of meanings. Fatne means the place where you feed your animals. So it could mean stable too. Okay? Or feeding trough. My pastor likes to translate that as feeding trough. Alright? This cloth thing doesn't mean cloths, it means grave clothes. I refer you to my pastor's Luke 2 series in the year 2000, Better Things for Christmas, and to his 1965 Matthew series, and you can just get that straight from him, because it's a lot of material and I don't have time to go through it. Okay? The point is, alright, that this is where he's born. Okay? The magi aren't there. The magi are in Jerusalem. Okay? There is one angel here, which to them looks like a star, but to all these shepherds, Okay, there are a bunch of angels. Okay, see, whole bunch of them. Being very direct, whereas the magi are guessing. See the split screen TV? You got the magi on the left running around Jerusalem causing everybody to be upset. And you got the shepherds being appeared to by a bunch of angels telling them directly, go to Bethlehem and look for this baby that's lying in a feeding trough with grave clothes. Okay? And that's what they say. Oh, let's go see, let's go do this. So they came in a hurry and they found him. Alright? Now you know that the shepherds went and told everybody after that. Alright, see? Alright, and then we got the ceremony. Alright, he's got his circumcision. We saw that from Leviticus 26, fulfilling the law. Okay, their purification, hers was another 33 days. Okay, this is all Leviticus 12. That's how we know they were there for a month in Jerusalem. So they are in Jerusalem at the very time the magi are there. That's how the magi are able to follow. See? After coming to the house, they see the star, which is an angel, going before them. Why? They're going back up toward Nazareth. And then it came and stood over the house. Not the manger. The house. So this is about 40 days after. Okay? You see, can you make the comparison between the two sides of the screen? Alright? And you see now the funny play that Luke, on the right-hand side, is making on the same themes in Matthew on the left-hand side of dedication and light, which are the two main ideas in Hanukkah. Okay, I hope that helped. If not, yell at me.
You know, we're all going to die. In the final analysis, there's only going to be one thing that we're all going to care about after we're dead. Him. We're only going to care about Him. We're going to see Him as He is. And we're all going to be kicking ourselves in the head for not having learned Him better while we were down here. It won't matter what we were. It won't matter how people liked us. It won't matter how important we were to the world. And we're going to look back on our lives and we're all going to say, golly, I really wasted my time. I could have been learning Christ. And His thinking is in the Bible. And it sits in every hotel room. And we all know a lot of it by heart. And yet we don't know anything. We do know a whole lot about the sports scores, and you can talk to a lot of people and get a lot of excited conversation about where's the latest buy on a good computer. Some singers come out with the latest song and it's hit the charts. And a lot of people know all about that. But God, His Son, how gorgeous He is. Nah. Religion makes God real boring. Some chore you gotta do on Sunday. Or in order to feel good about God, you gotta sing Rah Rah Jesus. Especially at Christmas. We're not gonna think like we do now then. And won't be anybody twisting our arm. God doesn't force you to have an opinion. We're just gonna look at Him and go, oh. Spiritual life is really about how you think. It's not about what you do. Why? Because the only thing you take with you is your thinking. Because the only thing that goes to heaven is your soul. Your body stays down here and disintegrates. Your human spirit, of course, is your spiritual life with God, and that's really integrated with your soul. That goes, but that's immaterial too. You get a new body, and you ain't going to think the way you do now. By choice. The point is that you're going to see Him. I'm going to see Him. And we're all going to be saying one thing. Damn. Why didn't I pay more attention to Christ